All right, thanks very much, everyone. Yeah, I'll just get started. This is me, and I normally start this with who are you and what are you doing here, or depending on the audience, who the fuck are you? What the fuck are you doing here? So this is me on the right. I was going to wear this jumper today, and I realised I would just look like I was wearing the same thing as I'm talking about, which would be strange. But who's that person in the ugly sweater, and what are they talking about? Well, I'll try and answer that now. And to answer that, I'll tell you a little bit about how I got here. Hopefully useful for anyone who's interested in games development or becoming a games writer, or how I kind of got into this job, and explain maybe why I know a little bit of what I'm talking about today, hopefully. So I started by doing a PhD in artificial intelligence, which I stopped doing to make my own games blog, which was a great financial decision because obviously there's no money in AI and I wouldn't be very rich right now. But no, podcasts were really the future. So I made a games blog, and then I was on some podcasts with friends, and then I did some writing for some games websites. Unwinnable magazine is really good, by the way. It's still running, and it's really high quality games writing, which is quite hard to find. You can still get it in Unwinnable magazine. So I did some games journalism, and from there I went on and did some writing, some short story writing. And I should point out, if anyone's a bit older like me, please don't feel discouraged about the state of your career. I was told when I was at school a long time ago that I obviously loved writing and I was probably going to try and become a writer. And I agreed. I did lots of writing at school and I loved it. And then like 25 years later, I started writing. So it took a long time. About 8 or 9 years ago, I started writing properly. I think for many people, they have a midlife crisis. For me, it was buying a lot of dungarees and deciding that I wanted to be a games writer. I think you realise one day, and you wake up one day and you think, if it's more likely that I'll never do this than I will, so I'd probably better get started now. So anyway, I did some short story writing and I won a prize. That gave me the encouragement to go and do something silly like write a novel. So I wrote a novel called Anna and Dreaming. That's the first in a trilogy called the Metic's Fade trilogy. And they're all about artists who can paint, dance and sew and sing new realities. So it's all about creativity, which is always kind of a focus for my talks. After I wrote my first book, I went away and did some short story writing. I think short story writing is a great way to hone your craft as a writer. You need to be really efficient. You can't have any wasted words. Editors are rightfully very picky. It's a great process for learning your craft. After doing some short story writing, I went back and I finished the trilogy. I wrote the rest of the books, and then I got into games writing. And I'd played games. That was the other thing that I did as well as write stories. I've played games since playing on a Spectrum 48K in 1986. Loading up games from tapes, hearing horrible noises. So I've played games all my life, and eventually I got around to trying to make some. To be fair, games writer hasn't always existed as a job. I've did games programming. I'm terrible at it. I can't draw to save my life. So I'm just glad that one of the few number of skills that I have finally became useful to games. And as you know now, whether it's Baldur's Gate or Disco Elysium, writers can often form kind of a core member of the team, can drive all development in some cases. So these are some games that I've worked on. My breakthrough game was Cloudpunk, which you might have heard of. Recently, I released a game called Best Served Cold that I was lead writer on. I'm working on a game called Service with a Shotgun, which has a demo out. But the main thing I'm doing is Nivalis, where I lead a team of writers on quite a big game. So it's not as indie. It's published by 505. Now, the real question for today that I hope to answer is, how do you make people care about this? This is Rania, the lead character from Cloudpunk. She's made of voxels, and yeah, she's a pretty straightforward, cool person without a very exciting job. But we tried to make it exciting. So how do you make people care about this without this? I've mostly made non-violent games so far, so this is a gun. Without necessarily killing this. So this is Camus from Cloudpunk. We had a company make plushie toys for characters from the game. Camus is a robot dog car. It makes sense in the game. But whenever I was working on Cloudpunk, I says, what emotions are we hoping to get from the players? And Marco, the project lead, said, I would really want to make the players cry. It's ironic because he mostly makes the developers cry. But in this case, we says, well, we'll just have a dog and then we'll kill the dog. Now, I'm not going to tell you whether we did kill Camus in the game. You have to play it to find out. But I think we had some more sophisticated ways of engaging the player emotionally than just killing the dog. Or did we? So, another way of saying this is, how does Rania, like this, compare with another game that came out around the same time as us, compare with Keanu fucking Reeves? Yeah, it's not easy. Well, to explain this, first of all, I'll have to take you on a hero's journey. I'm just joking. Yeah. So instead, I'll tell you a little bit about my own approach to this. So I write on an answer, one answer. There's spelling mistakes. If you spot any, you get bonus points. They're intentional. So this says one answer is buddy cops, which is what I tend to write in quite often. So the buddy cop dynamics experiencing a wee renaissance just now in games, movies, and films. You probably recognise these people. Feel free to shout out who you're seeing here, the bottom right. Kim Kutaragi and Harry Dubon. Yeah. Disco Elysium. And then this is the Fortnite version of Keanu Reeves and V. I don't know why. So how can you leverage an odd couple pairing of protagonists in your storytelling? The answer is elementary. Sorry. It's just peak show fans in there. I wasn't sure about that one, but you laughed. So my buddies were Rania and Camus originally in Cloudpunk, but after Cloudpunk was done,
try clear blueprints. That you can trust. Clearly.
My goodness. Oh no, we can't skip from here. How frustrating. Maybe if we go on here. Geez, oh, do we need to go? Oh, this go off this side of the screen on here. Yes or no? Thank you for your patience.
I guess.
My ship had finally come in, but in this case, the ship was a battered Hova. Redemption comes in all shapes and sizes, sometimes with bumps, dents, and a dime store paint job.
What? Who is this?
The dame wanted a name. What did I have left to lose? And nothing but my hat. I let her know that I was Huxley, but I left off the private investigator. She'd know the deal soon enough.
So you're a private investigator and your name is Huxley.
The dame was as sharp as my ex-wife's parting words before she left me and moved back in with her mother. She'd pegged me as a PI, but I still needed her help. Maybe I could drop some bills in her pocket if she could get me back to the big stack.
I think Huxley is malfunctioning.
I'm closing this channel now. Please stop calling me.
The dame was giving me a shoulder so cold, I was getting frostbite. I had to sweeten the deal. I'd already mentioned the cash, but no dice. Maybe I'd put it all on red and tell her about the girl I was trying to save. The dame sounded hard as ice, but Pasta's story was so sad it would melt a diamond.
Why does he talk like that?
I might actually help him if he wasn't so annoying. I've never heard so many mixed metaphors in all my...
I dangled the bait in the water, but the dame wasn't buying. Without my help, Pasta was done for.
Alright, so that's a character from Cloudpunk. That's Huxley, and kind of the character of Huxley was the key to how I would follow up Cloudpunk. So Cloudpunk had Rania and Camus, and those characters were really popular. But for City of Ghosts, I needed new characters. City of Ghosts is the DLC, but it's about the same length or maybe a little bit longer than Cloudpunk. It had to be more ambitious story-wise, character-wise, and plot-wise. I wanted to have a bigger cast and kind of time jumps and characters switching out as the story went on. So I needed new characters. And one of the things that I looked at was the Steam reviews. So whenever I was writing Cloudpunk, I didn't know what people liked and what people didn't like and what people resonated with. But after the game came out, people loved Huxley. So Huxley's this weird malfunctioning android, as you can tell. He's got this like kind of like noir detective personality because he's malfunctioning. And everyone loved him and they loved the banter between Camus and Huxley. And this kind of back and forward bantering was really popular. So I decided to kind of leverage that. And it was a good cop, bad cop dynamic, which worked really well. So I thought, can I do it again and again and just keep doing it in all the games that I work on? Yes, so far is the answer. So these two characters are from Best Served Cold. This is Hugo and Elena. Quite different characters. And these are quite mismatched characters. So as I worked on characters like Huxley and Camus, Rani and Camus, Hugo and Elena, I realised that these mismatched characters have this inherent conflict. They do the jobs differently. Resolution of their conflict creates an inherent character arc. As soon as you have two characters that don't get on, have to work together, they're going to have to learn how to work together eventually. It kind of gives you like a free, out-the-box character arc for them. Camaraderie and banter are reliable, engaging tropes. This stuff writes itself. Not quite, but it does give you a lot of, it gives you a rail to ride on, you know, so this idea of the mismatched characters. In the case of Elena and Hugo's like this really by the numbers detective. He's not great, he's pretty average. He knows all the rules, and Elena's a kind of like retired genius Sherlock Holmes type character who breaks all the rules. So you've got that kind of conflict. So I call this dichotomy, these two types of characters, drunks and safety inspectors. So for a City of Ghosts, I had two characters. I had Hace, a hedonistic failed revolutionary with substance abuse problems, and Morpho, an uptight, clueless corporate android cadet. Now, in some ways, Hace has most of the same values as Rania from the first game. She thinks that the system's all fucked up. It's a horrible cyberpunk dystopia that she lives in. People are they're just living in a bit of a corporate hellscape. She knows that things need to change, but the way that she would go about doing that or surviving that environment is completely different from Hace. He's like this broken funhouse reflection of Rania. And in the same way, Morpho is kind of this mirror image of Camus. Camus is like your moral compass in Cloudpunk. He's really friendly, he's really cheerful, he's really naive. Morpho is this kind of like, again, kind of by the numbers, uptight, ambitious droid that wants to join the equivalent of the kind of Navalis police force. So in the previous one, as I was saying, Hugo's a stick in the mud, mediocre detective, divorced, who loves model trains, and Elena's a retired genius with no time for excuses. So you can, even just this kind of scant description of these characters, you can imagine how well they're going to get on or not get on, and how working together is going to create a lot of drama. So here's some specific rules that I set for myself that helped me for writing these buddy cop duos. So this is where it gets a wee bit more technical, but hopefully just really practical, pragmatic things you can kind of apply to your narrative. So these characters have deep differences. They don't just have different natures. It's not like one of them's cheerful and one of them's grumpy, although that can be the case. It's that their view of how the world works is fundamentally different. They just have different realities that they exist between. And I've got here banter, not bicker. So specifically, sometimes what I see in kind of younger writers or less experienced writers, let's say, is they have, in place of drama or tension or humour, they have this bickering where characters disagree about something constantly, and each line is a criticism of the line before. And this can be really easy to write. It builds up inertia. You kind of like, and then he says this, and then she says this. But it has the same effect as writers that try and make every line a punchline, and then it stops being funny after a while. One character really needs to be trying to build something and the other one's destroying it. They can't both be destroying each other constantly. In the same way, one character is probably reaching out and the other one is retreating. If you don't have that, then you get into bickering, which is frustrating, but bantering can be quite fun. So it's a hard line to gauge, but if you get that feeling where like both characters are constantly one-upping each other and no one's building anything, then you might be getting into bickering as opposed to more banter, which can be more fun. Another advantage that you've got when you've got these duos, I'm going to say cops, but I'm going to explain later that they don't need to be cops, is that whenever one of them doesn't have something interesting or relevant to say, the other one does. It's just having two protagonists. You know, if something happens in a story that doesn't resonate with the values of one character, it probably does with the other. So you get two chances at drama for each situation. A few more techniques that I think are useful. I think the characters shouldn't want the same things. So contrasting goals for the characters, including gameplay goals, can create challenging and exciting dynamics. So for example, Hace and Morpho in City of Ghosts, their goals are directly opposed. Morpho wants to arrest Hace, but he's not a full corpsec officer till the next day when his license clears. So he basically has imprisoned Hayes and is driving around with him for the night. Meanwhile, Hayes is trying to get himself off the hook. So it's that idea of like their goals exactly clash with each other, but they still have to work together. There should be inherent tension, so these characters should bring about the best and the worst of each other. The examples that I've got here is like the types is a bartender, an alcoholic, street fighter and a pacifist, a sex worker and a priest, a diet coach and me. I just ate a whole pizza before this, so this is definitely true. I joined the gym last week, so I'll let you know how that goes. But this inherent tension between these characters can come from their roles, their jobs, as well as their worldviews. So these are archetypes, perhaps, that are really clashing with each other. And then you can challenge prejudices with this writing as well. So you can have one character belonging to a minority group, and if they do, their identity should undercut and challenge the stereotypes and prejudices of the other character. So, for example, in the case of Hayes and Morpho, one of them's a criminal and breaks all the rules. The other one's a aspiring police officer, and he has to come to understand that breaking these rules is actually the right thing to do sometimes. And Hayes has to learn to get drunk less, basically, in the story. So buddy cop relationships are dramatically limited when both characters are cis, white, straight males. So I think it's entirely possible to have both characters be cis, white, straight males, but it's almost always more interesting to mix that up. There's plenty of straight, white, middle class, white guys in games. Not that we don't need more, but you can get a lot of kind of free interest and engagement just out of varying this and not defaulting to this. So one of the things that we did with, for example, Nivalis, is when we create a new character, it generates like an automatic profile. So like, okay, we need a character here that's like a vendor character. We make sure that that picture is generally like a female character or a non-binary character, so that we're not defaulting to like a white, straight male all the time. Like, unless there's a good reason to use that, that should be a choice to have that particular combination of, intersectional traits. Techniques in brief. So there's a couple of things here that are quite useful that you kind of get for free again for having buddy cops. You get free tutorialization. So one of the ways that I talk about this is like kind of having almost like the two commentators in football. So one talks about what's happening in the story and the one comments on it. So, one, you get the flavor commentators, like he tells you the stats and the background stuff. Perhaps not tons of football fans in this room. Maybe there is, I don't know, but you get the general idea probably. And this is how it can work with characters in duos and games as well. One is kind of like reiterating what's happening in the story, making sure the player knows where they are within the plot, and the other one's kind of commenting on it, giving their opinions on it and stuff like that. Let me check my time because I don't want to go over too much. I'm getting close to being over already. Relationship plateaus. So I have this idea when these character relationships build that they shouldn't just be constantly getting closer to each other. They're enemies, and then they kind of tolerate each other. We can work together. We're friends now. We're best friends. I love you. It doesn't need to go like that. We can have these plateaus where the relationship kind of maybe sticks, or maybe even goes back a step as the characters maybe open up. When you become friends with someone, you maybe tell them some stuff about yourself. Hopefully, if you're good friends, that trust is like rewarded and you get closer to them. But in relationships, in real life, just as in games, someone can be like, oh, I don't know about that. I wish you hadn't told me that. That can be quite an interesting thing to play with in your fiction. As characters get to know each other better, they might not necessarily get to like each other better. I can fix you and vice versa. So there's a wee bit more advanced, but I do love story types where one character effectively has the means to emancipate, to free, to empower the other character, and they willingly withhold it. It creates a lot of tension, and there's all sorts of different ways you can do that. You can see how that works in City of Ghosts, where one character can literally let the other one off the hook, say like, okay, you're not going to jail tomorrow. But they're not going to do that without good reason. So, takeaways. Some things to think about. In Nivalis, we have buddies. Buddies as far as the eye can see. So Nivalis is the biggest game that I've worked on. I've got a team of writers that I kind of organise, work with. And we have lots of these buddy cop pairings throughout the story because they work really well. As a concept, buddy cop relationships rarely require the characters to be buddies or cops. Some of them in this examples that I've given you are, but many of them aren't. They don't need to be cops to be buddies. Any characters with contrasting worldviews, engaging interactions, clashing personalities, and emotionally charged dialogue will do. And lastly, you don't need Keanu Reeves to hook your players, but it probably doesn't hurt. I have time to play a little short clip at the end here. All right, yeah, I'm going over. Thank you for your patience, everyone. I've got 2 sections here. One of them's a YouTube video. You can look it up if you want. The character's called Gorgothoa. It's a lift that comes to life and has dialogue. I won't play that, but I will play you some dialogue from my friend Andrea, who did the voice for Rania in Cloudpunk. And the reason I'm playing you this is just because it's funny, but I'll give you an excuse to play it. The excuse is that voice actors, if you're lucky enough to have them, will bring so much to your game. Dealing with them directly and communicating what you were trying to do with your story will often let them bridge the gap between what you were going for, what you didn't quite achieve with your writing, and what they can bring to it. So Andrea's fantastic. She won an award, or quite a few awards for Rania, but she also won an award for the best outtake in a game, which is her trying to just deliver this one line that she absolutely can't seem to get. So I will play it for you now. Yeah.
She says you should take off the dress. 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 She says you should take off the dress.
It's still funny. I've heard it like a million times. It's the bit where she goes, and she still doesn't get it. Okay, so
She
that's...
says you
No, not again, not again. Sorry. Last slide. There we go. Yeah, this is my email address. I'm very happy to hear from any of you. It's very short talk for me. I can talk for ages, as you maybe guessed. If you want to message me on social media, I'm CamDownTom everywhere. That terrible username is the legacy of my blog, and I'm stuck with it. Or just email me. I'd be very glad to hear from any of you. And thank you very much for coming along. Listen, thanks for today.